The oversight function.
Follow the money.
Follow the money, yes.
That is the oversight function.
Okay.
Follow the money. You appropriate the money for specific purposes. Ensure that the monies have been spent for that specific purpose that you've appropriated for. And in ensuring that these loans would go that way, if and when they are eventually approved, the various committees, standing committees of the National Assembly would ensure that the loans taken for the agricultural sector, because that's a critical sector to our nation, the loans, the agriculture committee of both houses would ensure that the monies have been applied the way that they have been requested for. It takes time for these things to manifest. The loans have to be taken first under the right conditions. We're ensuring that. But what is really key is to clear the air on the issue of domestic borrowing.
Before you go there, we still want to be clear that this oversight function, how do you exercise it? How do we ensure? We need to be very clear.
In terms of,
yes.
Maybe you want processes and procedure. Unfortunately, there is no process manual or a procedures manual.
So how do we
that
know
you have?
That
what I said is you follow the money. We perform oversight functions. You've lent money out, or you've appropriated money for the rehabilitation of National Stadium, Abuja. There's a committee of the House oversighting the Ministry of Sports. During their oversight visits, they go to that facility and ensure that the components that have been appropriated, that we have appropriated money for, have been done. It's as simple as that. If it's not done, you have the implementing agency responsible and you hold them accountable.
I'm still not clear.
That's the procedure.
$9 billion, $9.05 billion, 9.3, whatever number it is,
yes.
Something in the region of 9 billion.
9.3.
Yes.
Now, what is it that the federal government is saying to the National Assembly that we want to use the money for? Infrastructure development. What precisely?
They're broken into several: agriculture,
yes,
rail, road, water,
education,
erosion control, education, job creation. There's so many. They've made so many proposals.
So
but each item will be critically evaluated by the committee of the House for consideration by the whole House.
How can you reassure me as a Nigerian that that money will be followed, and this is the process for following it and tracking it? And how do you enforce if 1 billion is guaranteed to bring us rail that will work from Lagos to Kano? I schooled in Kano. I used to go by rail from Lagos to Kano every holiday, from Kano to Lagos, and we enjoyed that. We don't have it anymore. Nobody can do that.
The question you want
an answer. How can we be sure that that will be enforced?
The question you want an answer to is impossible to ask. We just need to look at the process and the systems. That's all you can do. How do you ensure that? How were you sure that when you left your house this morning, you would get here? You set out in the morning. The processes. I've told you what the processes are.
Yes.
The process is, once the loans have been taken under the right conditions,
okay,
get the terms right,
okay,
then the National Assembly will follow the money.
And when
the disbursing agencies have an obligation to follow their money, but we're not relying on them. We follow the money.
So your committee, at what point would you be saying to the National Assembly, this money is not being used for what it was ring-fenced to achieve? And what would happen? Will the National Assembly be calling the federal government to order? And what power, what authority do you have to ensure that you make the government do this? That's the
power
thing. Yes,
of oversight and appropriations. That's what the power you have. If a ministry or a department of government or an agency is not applying funds judiciously, then you stop whatever project it is that they're doing, or you stop funding.
The project.
You stop further funding to that specific
project. Can the National Assembly stop the project or stop funding?
We have the power of appropriation. If we don't appropriate, you can't spend.
Excuse me.
But they spent a lot of money that were not.
I think I disagree with him. I have to disagree with him now.
That is in the
power
past.
ends in the you don't have appropriation power over the national the house, the states and the local governments. You don't have appropriation power over them because the money can go into recurrent. But let's leave that.
It can't. We can't borrow for recurrent. That's what I'm saying.
No, but how do you know when it goes into recurrent?
Because you follow the money.
No, let me tell you what they are not doing. Let me tell you what they are not doing. Because I want us to be serious here. I'm not interested. I have gotten to my age now. I want to see Nigeria before I die to be a great nation, and I don't want to be engaging in theory and stories. This is what I want us to do right away. Instead of borrowing that money, why not we have projects and say these are the projects we're going to do this year? And we say we are borrowing this money, but we are not going to see that money. People who do this project will give us bonds. Do you understand what I mean? When they finish, or we can even get bonds for them. When they finish, the money is paid automatically. No naira comes. None of the money comes to Nigeria. Do you understand? Can I explain myself again? In one of my articles, I said, or in one of the proposals I made to the government, I said, let's go and borrow 300 billion. But it's not going to be fiscal cash because no nation will give you fiscal cash of 300 billion. We use that money as collateral, and we now say we have to build road from here to Sokoto, and it's going to all the companies in the world that are going to do that project. All we bring the cost, and we know we award it to company B, and the company B we now show company B that we can raise a bond to show you that we can pay. That's what I mean. And when you finish the project at a certain level, your money is paid internationally. Your money is quickly paid. Nigerian politicians will never see that money.
The person who is lending you the money.
Yes, exactly.
They will pay directly to the contract.
Yes, exactly. So that Nigerian politicians will not see the money. Let me tell you what is happening. I'm sorry to tell my brother this. The money goes to the current. Because as soon as these politicians in the states whose revenue come from the federal government and they have never developed their tax system to have internally generated revenue, what they do, they go and borrow the money and put all these beautiful projects they're going to do. At the end of the day, because of massive need to pay for schools and this and that, the money is diverted. And he has no power to go and ask and bring the governor to stand before him and tell him how he spent the money. That's why. But another thing I want to add is, why not we borrow money to pay down our domestic debt? Because the cost of domestic debt, look, we can borrow at 0.3. That's what I mean. We can borrow at 0.3 and use it to pay our debt, which is 16%. You understand what I mean?
I wanted to talk on the issue.
We could have done that so that we free ourselves from domestic debt. So that we have
Let's hear from Mr. Wani a bit.
Yeah, because you are representing the Abuja. You are representing. I think a lot of people. A lot of people want to hear from the chambers.
Okay, go ahead.
Private sector, and that is the engine room of this economy.
That's why I need to talk on this issue of domestic
exactly.
It's important.
We appreciate
it's
the work.
Important.
Yeah, our legislatures are doing in Abuja. We appreciate that. One of the major solutions is we want to borrow at 0% with all the beautiful concessions. We want to borrow, but can we first of all look inward? 2 weeks ago, International Energy Association came out to say Nigeria loses about $7 to $8 billion in oil and gas sector alone every year through bunkering. Stealing, we have security there. Under invoicing by the agencies there. We have oversight function committees in the House and Senate. They've not been able to do anything reasonable to curtail this leakage. How much weight are we going to place on such system regarding this 9.3 billion we're talking about?
Yes.
Government agencies, that revenue agencies such as NIMASA, IFRS, customs, CAC, these are serious cash cow.
Yes.
And you look at their figures. Their revenue is matching their costs.
Yes.
They are supposed to be serious, apart from serious revenue. And we have oversight function from the Senate, from the House, overseeing these parastatals. They have not been able to give us the Nigerian people the desired result. How much weight are we going to place on such an institution in this regard? We have to do something different, and it has to be radical.
Okay, let's, Honorable, because we have to wrap up, so we'll let you... Okay.
The Seventh Assembly is taking the business of Parliament very seriously. Of course, it takes a while for the effect to begin to manifest. And Nigerians have to understand that. You can't just change overnight. I wish it was a switch position or a switch situation. You just pull the plugs and the lights come on. Unfortunately, that is not the situation with governance and government. Things have got to be given the natural lifespan to manifest. Most unfortunately, the passion of Nigerians against borrowing is quite understandable. And this parliament is taking that serious. The domestic debt situation, if you've been following the trend in the parliament, we've raised serious issues about domestic debt. I've spoken at various functions and on various TV programs about the serious concern that Parliament has about the domestic debt situation. And that is what has led the Parliament this time to be seeking for a $5 addition to the benchmark to reduce domestic debt. Wonderful. Specifically. Wonderful. That is the position of the House of Reps. That is contained in the MTF. The Senate has a corresponding increase of $3.78. Also targeted that increase specifically to reduce the domestic debt, because we know the private sector are they create the jobs. Government has no business creating jobs.
The private sector want to hear this.
The private sector,
very loud.
Well, we've been saying this at every opportunity. I've said it in channels television before. I've been here to say it. We want to reduce the domestic debt so that the private sector would have access to money. Don't give the market open to government. Government is good business. Our securities are backed by oil. Foreign investors take this money. Yeah. The banks who should lend to channels to grow would rather go and buy the bond that DMO would sell $70 billion naira every month from the market. Yes. Why would I, as a banker, knowing there's no risk with government bond because it's backed by oil, go and lend money to channels that can have problem tomorrow? Exactly. There's risk in borrowing the private sector.
Channels will not have problems.
No, I mean touch wood.
I know.
Touch wood. You know, I'm saying the private sector. So why should I borrow Dangote money? Why should I borrow Mike Adenuga Globe business money? Why should I? It's high risk. But I'll give money to government securities. Okay. That's what we'll be making noise about in the parliament. Apart from that, Parliament is also saying that the Fiscal Responsibilities Act says that there should be a debt ceiling for the nation. Nigeria should have a debt ceiling. We should not break a certain boundary. The executive say that the process is being completed because they've had issues collating the figures of the states. So we have assurances that within the next few months, we're going to have before the National Assembly a debt ceiling. 3, this borrowing, this 9 billion, is not a 9 billion to be borrowed if it is 9 billion. This is a proposal. It can come back with from 0 to 9 billion.
Okay.
Whatever is approved is not a borrowing for a year. It's a borrowing under a medium-term expenditure framework. It's a period of 3 years. It's a 2012, 2013, 2014 borrowing. So if you like, you can break that into 3, for example, and say it is about 2 billion or 3 billion every year. Now, like I said, we're not dogmatic about ratios in the parliament. Yes, we know ratios are important, but even at the 9 billion, Nigeria will still be within the country-specific threshold that we set ourselves in terms of debt to GDP. Will still be below 25%.
Okay.
However, there's a problem.
Gentlemen, I'm sorry, we've got to go now.
Yes.
Good.
So we've got to take your last word. Let us start with
one sentence each.
One sentence each. Honorable.
Parliament appreciates the concern of Nigerians about borrowing. At the House of Reps, we are the representatives of the people, and we take that position of the people very seriously. And that has reflected in what we're saying about our domestic debt and the manner in which we manage our external debt. My message to Nigerians: please bear with this parliament, continue to push us, criticize us positively, as we try to ensure that we have an accountable and a transparent system of government that ensure that we can manage our debts while we make maximum use of the opportunities available globally.
Mr. Amara.
Thank you so very much. I think what I will say is this. At the end of the day, what Nigerians are interested in is getting the problem fixed. And I could not imagine in 2010, when somebody called Mustafa Chikobi was hired to come and fix our banking industry, and he fixed it in less than 1 year. So the problem is that instead of, we have to be practical, and we have to really look at how to, because the population is increasing, a lot of things are increasing. So what I'm trying to say in essence is that government is going to be proactive, the National Assembly is going to be proactive, and going to think big how to get out of this country, this problem, not piecemeal solutions. I'm ready to support them to borrow 200 billion, but let the 200 billion translate into 500 billion in 2 years' time and create jobs for Nigerians. Instead of borrowing piecemeal and just keeping us to be spectators in the system and all or be comfortable, Nigerians lose job every day and people dump their products here.
Okay. Mr. Wani.
At the private sector, we are very happy that today we have moved beyond the point where the vice president will say that Nigerian debt level is X in the morning and the president will say Nigerian debt level is Y. We have moved beyond that level. That is a progress. At the private sector, we want to see the legislature that will be able to implement what we just heard, that something is going to be done to domestic borrowing, to make sure that money is available. That we, the SMEs and corporates, are no longer competing in a high rate, hot lending market with the government in 2013, because the situation is really pathetic for the private sector. I think.
Thank you.
I think
you very
we take
much,
it off from
gentlemen.
there.
I was very pleased with what the Honourable said. Well said, well said. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Our eyes are on you, as you noted, and Nigerians are more discerning, more so than ever before, and they are keeping an eye on things that are going on and taking notes and making their comments and making their criticisms. We've been looking at Nigeria's rising debt profile, and I'd like to thank our panelists, Mr. Odilem Nwagbara, a financial analyst.
Thank you for having me.
Mr. Vincent Wani, Director, Research and Advocacy, Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Thank you. As well as Honorable Adeyinka Ajayi, Chairman, House Committee on AIDS, Loans and Debt Management. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming to give us your insights this morning. Sunrise will be right back with yet another interesting topic. Please don't go away.